Welcome to the cabinet of science and fiction. When we say alchemy, what flickers into your imagination?
Probably some old wizard type in a dusty tower, right? Surrounded by bubbling potions and strange symbols, maybe chasing after a way to turn dull metal into gold or, brewing up an immortality potion.
Yeah, that's the classic image.
That's the story we've inherited, kind of a mix of myth and old tales.
It is a captivating image, and like many good myths, it holds a kernel of truth. But the real story of alchemy is, well, it's far more layered and surprising, actually.
Okay.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into what alchemy truly represented. Forget the simplistic gold-making narrative for a bit. We'll explore its fascinating connection to the very beginnings of modern science and the profound, often unexpected philosophies that really fueled it.
Absolutely. Because while it's easy to write off alchemy as just this misguided pursuit of magical riches, you might be astonished to discover its quiet but, well, crucial role in the development of things like porcelain, gunpowder, even this grand vision of a unified cosmos.
Right. We're going to unpack the secret language of alchemical symbolism and explore the different yet surprisingly interwoven ideas about what alchemists were really trying to achieve.
So let's lay the groundwork. What are we actually talking about when we say alchemy? The word itself has a fascinating journey.
It does. The thinking is that it traces back to ancient Egypt, to the word chem or cheme, which referred to their land, the fertile black earth along the Nile.
Oh, okay.
When the Greeks rolled into Egypt, they adopted the term, and it evolved into chemia. Later, when the Arab world held sway in Egypt in the 7th century, they added their definite article, al, creating alchemia.
Right.
And that's widely considered the direct ancestor of our word alchemy.
Makes sense. And initially, the popular understanding of alchemy certainly centered on that idea of changing ordinary metals into gold or silver.
Yeah, the big goal.
The legendary philosopher's stone, believed to be the key to this transformation, and the quest for an elixir of life to conquer disease and, extend lifespan, were central to this picture.
But that's really just scratching the surface, isn't it? Our material suggests that alchemy wasn't just about making precious metals and living forever.
Not at all.
It was also a way of seeing the world, a philosophy, and a hands-on experimental approach to understanding nature. There's even a quote that hints at this, suggesting that if everyone could make gold, its monetary value would vanish, and alchemists would only prize it for its scientific teaching.
That's a fascinating point.
That's a real shift in perspective, right?
It is, yeah, and it highlights that for some alchemists, the physical outcomes were less important than gaining a deeper understanding of how nature works. However, there was also a significant and contrasting viewpoint that saw alchemy as primarily a spiritual path.
A spiritual path. How did that manifest in their work, like in the lab?
Well, this perspective interpreted the physical processes of alchemy, the heating, dissolving, mixing, reforming substances, all that stuff, as symbolic representations of the human soul's journey toward perfection.
Okay, like metaphors.
Exactly. The transmutation of base metals into gold mirrored the soul's purification and ascent towards spiritual gold, achieved by shedding negativity and cultivating virtue, Concepts like the new birth were seen as analogous to the alchemical union with the divine.
So it was like a grand, elaborate metaphor played out in the lab. But if that's the case, why all the detailed lab notes and descriptions of chemical substances? Why bother with the actual experiments?
That's precisely where the purely symbolic interpretation falls short. Our sources clearly show that alchemists were deeply engaged in practical experimentation. Paracelsus, for instance, he spoke of the true spagyric physicians, the alchemists of his time, diligently working in their labs, toiling over furnaces and finding real satisfaction in their hands-on work.
Right, getting their hands dirty.
Exactly. Their writings are full of detailed accounts of chemical reactions and discoveries, things you can't just brush off as purely symbolic. There's really no doubt that the foundations of modern chemistry owe a significant debt to the practical efforts of these alchemists.
Okay, that makes sense. They were definitely doing the physical work, but our material also emphasizes a very strong mystical thread woven through alchemical beliefs. It wasn't just about the beakers and burners, was it?
Absolutely not. Alchemists frequently viewed their art, with a capital A, as a divine gift, containing profound secrets that couldn't be learned solely from books. They consistently taught that having the right mental and spiritual orientation towards the divine was the essential first step in undertaking their great work, the magnum opus.
The right mindset, basically.
Yeah, exactly. There are passages stressing the need for a pure heart, a conscience free from selfish ambition, and approaching the work with sincere and earnest prayer. It suggests that the alchemist's inner life was considered just as crucial as their laboratory techniques.
That's a powerful intersection of the practical and the spiritual. It implies that the alchemist's inner transformation was seen as, like, mirroring the transformations they sought in the material world.
Precisely. And this leads us to the often baffling language of alchemy. Anyone who's ever tried to read alchemical texts knows they are filled with incredibly mystical and symbolic language, often intentionally obscure and, well, difficult to interpret in a purely literal scientific way.
Why the deliberate vagueness, though? Was it simply to create an air of mystery, or...?
There were several interconnected reasons, really. Firstly, some alchemists believed they were dealing with a realm beyond our ordinary senses, a deeper reality that couldn't be adequately described with everyday language, but only hinted at through symbols and metaphors.
Okay, describing the indescribable.
Sort of. Secondly, from its earliest stages, alchemy had a strong tradition of secrecy surrounding it.
Secrecy? What was the driving force behind that? Power. Danger.
Several factors contributed. Ancient myths often credited the origins of alchemy to gods or semi-divine beings, and this knowledge, with its potential to bestow godlike abilities, maybe even immortality, was seen as too potent to be widespread.
Right, not for just anyone.
And there was also a very practical concern. Imagine the societal upheaval if suddenly anyone could produce unlimited gold or silver.
Chaos. Total economic collapse.
Exactly. The economic and political ramifications would be immense. Alchemists believed their knowledge held immense power, which could be catastrophic if it fell into the wrong hands. So there was a sense of responsibility in guarding this potent knowledge.
Almost like protecting a powerful technology from misuse. Like nuclear secrets today, maybe?
Precisely. A good analogy. And secrecy also served to safeguard the very continuity of alchemical knowledge itself. By embedding their ideas in layers of symbolism, drawing on the imagery of Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and later Judeo-Christian mythology, alchemical concepts could circulate more freely, sort of hidden in plain sight from those not initiated into their understanding.
A kind of code.
Exactly. And there were also periods of intense persecution where alchemists and their writings were hunted down and destroyed. So secrecy wasn't just about preserving their knowledge, it was often about self-preservation. Some even drew parallels to biblical teachings, like the warning against casting pearls before swine. We even have historical accounts, like excerpts from the Testament of Cremer and the writings of Ramon Lull, emphasizing the strict oaths of secrecy taken by those initiated into alchemical mysteries.
So the cryptic language acted as a kind of code, protecting both the knowledge and the practitioners.
Right. And there was also a more subtle, but perhaps equally important, psychological and initiatory dimension to this deliberate obscurity.
Initiatory? How so?
By presenting students with a seemingly chaotic collection of writings filled with riddles and poetic metaphors, alchemy compelled them to engage not just intellectually but also intuitively. The very act of deciphering these texts, of experiencing that aha moment of personal insight, was considered a vital part of the learning process.
Ah, you had to work for it.
Exactly. To simply reveal the secrets directly would have been seen as almost sacrilegious, denying the student that crucial inner work of discovery.
So it was as much about inner transformation as it was about understanding the material world, that dual nature again.
Precisely. And this underscores the dual nature of alchemy. The spiritual and religious deeply intertwined with the physical and material. Our sources highlight the alchemical concept of fiho y volatile, the fixed and the volatile, reflecting this inherent duality.
Fiho y volatile, a fixed and volatile. Okay.
Even the term laboratory itself might have roots in this idea. Labora plus oratorio, meaning a place of work and prayer.
Wow, really? Labora, oratorio, laboratory. I never knew that.
There's a beautiful quote that really encapsulates this. Ora, leg, labra, et invenis.
Okay, let's break that down. Ora.
Pray. Pray, read, work, and you will discover.
Pray, read, work, and you will discover.
Yeah.
That quote really crystallizes it. The lab is both workshop and sanctuary.
Exactly. The hands-on work in the lab wasn't merely about manipulating substances. It was a means to explore and understand the intricate relationship between humanity and the natural world. But ultimately, the overarching goal wasn't just to transform external nature. It was to facilitate a profound transformation within the alchemists themselves, both their psyche and their physical being.
So the work at the bench served as a mirror.
Right, reflecting and actively influencing the alchemist's own psycho-spiritual journey.
And what about the ultimate aim, the legendary Philosopher's Stone? We understand it was tied to making gold and the elixir of life, but You've hinted at a deeper significance.
Absolutely. The Philosopher's Stone was certainly the ultimate material objective of the alchemical quest, the substance believed to hold the key to metallic transmutation and act as a universal panacea, a cure-all.
Big prize.
But it also served as a profound symbol of the alchemists' completed great work. Achieving the stone signified adeptship, a state of spiritual enlightenment, perfect health and longevity, and even the attainment of what was sometimes called the glorious body, a perfected, almost transcendent physical form.
So the gold and the cure-all were almost like byproducts of achieving a higher state of being.
In a way, yes. Especially during the Middle Ages, there was a growing emphasis on what became known as spiritual alchemy, where the material processes were increasingly interpreted as metaphors for inner transformation. Turning base metals into gold symbolized the soul's journey from imperfection to perfection, from ignorance to illumination. The Philosopher's Stone, in this context, represented a mystical key to unlocking this inner evolution.
But you've stressed that genuine alchemists didn't see these two aspects as entirely separate. They weren't just meditating, right?
Correct. True alchemists, or at least the ones we're focusing on, understood that the physical and the metaphysical were deeply interconnected, two facets of the same underlying reality. As the 20th century esotericist Louis Cattiot so eloquently put it, alchemy isn't just the yoga of the West, a purely internal practice. It involves both a material and a spiritual operation, often veiled beneath the language of common chemistry.
Okay.
These two aspects weren't mutually exclusive, but rather mutually reinforcing. In its mystical dimension, alchemy sought the spiritual regeneration of the individual, aiming to create the necessary conditions for the unfolding of divine potential within, allowing a human being to potentially achieve a godlike state, much like a seed develops into a mature plant.
Wow. This is so much richer and more nuanced than the popular image. It's like a whole philosophical and spiritual system expressed through laboratory work and cryptic texts. So where did this fascinating and multifaceted tradition even spring from? What are its roots? It sounds ancient.
Oh, it is. Pinpointing the precise origins of alchemy is a complex task, partly due to its extensive history spanning at least 4 millennia, and partly due to that deliberately symbolic and often obscure language we discussed.
Right, the secrecy and symbolism make tracing it hard.
Exactly. For a long time, the earliest clear references seemed to point to ancient Egypt, or perhaps to the Greeks and Romans, who had absorbed much of Egyptian knowledge. This led to the traditional view that Western alchemy originated in Egypt.
Okay, Egypt is ground zero.
And when we speak of Western alchemy, we're referring to the tradition that evolved in medieval Europe, drawing from Roman, Greek, and Islamic sources. This is distinct from traditions like Chinese and Hindu alchemy, which appear to have followed somewhat different paths, though potentially sharing some distant common ancestors. Whether there was a single point of origin for all these traditions remains a subject of debate, though.
Got it. So for a long time, Egypt was considered the main source for the Western tradition.
It was. The legendary figure of Hermes Trismegistos, the thrice great, was revered as the founder of Egyptian alchemy.
Hermes Trismegistos sounds impressive.
He was associated with the Egyptian god Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, and was credited with authoring the 42 books of knowledge, supposedly encompassing all areas of learning, including alchemy.
42 books.
Yeah. He's also credited with writing the Tabla Esmeralda, or Emerald Tablet, a really foundational text of Western alchemical philosophy that we know primarily through Greek and Arabic translations.
The Emerald Tablet. Okay. Heard of that one.
And this Hermetic philosophy, named in honor of Hermes, profoundly influenced the spiritual and philosophical underpinnings of Western alchemy. Interestingly, the very term Hermetic, meaning tightly sealed or secret, also derives from Hermes.
Oh, that connection makes perfect sense. Hermetically sealed from Hermes. But you mentioned more recent understandings of its deeper roots beyond Egypt.
Yes. There's a growing scholarly consensus today that much of ancient Egyptian knowledge itself might have had roots in even older civilizations in Mesopotamia, particularly the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians.
Mesopotamia. Okay, going back even further.
Archaeological findings, such as ancient clay tablets, suggest a rudimentary form of alchemy, or maybe proto-alchemy, existed in these cultures, primarily focused on the transformation of metals. A relatively recent analysis of Babylonian tablets dating back to the 13th century BCE, believed to be copies of even older Sumerian texts, details the production of silver from a combination of copper and other substances.
Wow, 13th century BCE. That's old.
It is. And these early recipes already incorporated ritualistic elements and were considered secret knowledge. Other texts refer to the sexuality, like male and female classifications of certain minerals and metals. Even the Code of Hammurabi lists known metals alongside the celestial bodies with which they were associated.
So associating metals with planets, that goes way back.
Way back. Babylonian ritual literature also reveals this symbolic division of salts and minerals, a conceptual element that persisted in alchemical thought for centuries.
So even in these very ancient cultures, the practical craft of metalworking was already intertwined with a kind of mystical understanding of the materials themselves.
Okay.
They weren't just, banging on metal.
Precisely. While the exact geographical point of origin is still debated, there's a general agreement among scholars that the foundations of alchemy are deeply connected to the ancient craft of metalworking that arose in various cultures. In the ancient world, metallurgy and mysticism were often inseparable.
Right.
The work of early metal artisans, or herreros, blacksmiths, combined to focus on the physical transformation of metals with a vitalistic view of nature. They believed that metals were alive, growing within the earth, much like a fetus in a mother's womb.
Metals growing like babies. Okay.
Yeah, this concept became fundamental to alchemical thinking. The alchemists aimed to accelerate this natural maturation of metals within their laboratory, bringing them to perfection, to gold, much faster than nature could. There's a quote that beautifully illustrates this connection, emphasizing the shared magical religious experience of miners, metal forgers, and alchemists in their relationship with this substance they considered both living and sacred.
That's a really insightful connection. The alchemist as someone speeding up nature's work. So from these early beginnings in Mesopotamia and Egypt, how did this alchemical knowledge then spread across the ancient world?
Well, it spread through various channels. From Egypt, it traveled to Greece, where it became known as chemia, and flourished in Alexandria, which emerged as a major intellectual center and a real hub of alchemical knowledge.
Alexandria, yeah, the famous library.
Exactly. From there, it moved to Rome, and as the Roman Empire expanded, so did the dissemination of these ideas across its vast territories. Unfortunately, much of this early Roman, Greek, and Egyptian alchemical knowledge is now considered lost.
Lost.
Largely due to turbulent periods in Alexandria, including those devastating fires that ravaged its renowned library, and events like Emperor Diocletian's decree in the 3rd century ordering the destruction of all alchemical books.
Diocletian destroyed them. Why? Fear of making gold.
That's the speculation, yeah. Fear it could destabilize the economy or empower rebels. Despite these significant losses, alchemical knowledge managed to survive, often kept secret and transmitted orally from teacher to disciple.
So it went into a sort of intellectual underground for a while, hiding from emperors and book burnings.
In a sense, yes. Following the decline of the Roman Empire, the focal point of alchemical development shifted eastward to the Islamic world. When the Arabs conquered Egypt in the 7th century, they adopted the Greek term chemia and prefixed it with their article al, referring to the black arts of Egypt. Alchemia, as we said.
Right, alchemia became alchemy.
And the Islamic world became a vital preserver and further developer of alchemical thought. Much of what we understand today about the alchemical writings of Greek, Roman, and Egyptian philosophers survived thanks to meticulous Arabic transcriptions and translations.
So they saved a lot of the ancient knowledge.
They really did. Interestingly, there was also a significant exchange of ideas with the East during this period. Chinese alchemy, with its strong emphasis on medicinal applications and the transmutation of the human body towards immortality, seems to have influenced Arab alchemists, although the precise extent of this influence is still a topic of scholarly discussion.
Chinese alchemy focusing more on health and long life.
Often, yes, though metal transmutation was there too. Similarly, Hindu knowledge was assimilated into Islamic alchemy, again with the exact degree of influence being an ongoing area of research and debate. This was facilitated partly by the Arab incursions into India starting in the 8th century.
So different intellectual and spiritual traditions were actively interacting and influencing each other across continents and cultures. It wasn't just one linear path.
Absolutely not. It was a real melting pot. And this brings us to how alchemy eventually made its way into Europe during the Middle Ages. The Muslim presence in the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain and Portugal, and the subsequent Christian Reconquista, along with crusades in the East, played a crucial role.
Contact through conflict and trade.
Exactly. As Europeans, including groups like the Knights Templar, came into contact with Islamic culture, they were exposed to this rich body of alchemical knowledge preserved and developed in the Arab world.
The Templars were involved? Interesting.
There's certainly speculation and connections drawn there. This knowledge then gradually spread across Europe, often cloaked in Christian symbolism, which is particularly evident if you know where to look in the allegorical designs within Gothic cathedrals, and through a network of clandestine schools and philosophical societies.
Hidden in church architecture. Wow.
Yeah. And later, the Rosicrucians, who gained prominence in the 16th and 17th centuries, were particularly instrumental in preserving and popularizing alchemical ideas, sparking renewed interest in the art.
It's like a hidden river of knowledge flowing through history, resurfacing in unexpected places and forms. Now, we've explored the origins and the underlying philosophies. Let's turn our attention to some of the individuals who dedicated their lives to this intriguing pursuit. Who are some of the key figures in the long history of alchemy?
Oh, the history of alchemy is filled with a fascinating array of individuals, some more grounded in historical fact than others, some almost entirely shrouded in legend.
Right, separating fact from fiction must be tricky.
It definitely is. One of the most foundational, though perhaps more of a symbolic figure than a historically verifiable person, is Hermes Trismegistus, whom we've already discussed as the legendary founder of Egyptian alchemy and the ultimate source of authority for many Western alchemists.
The thrice great guy.
That's him. His actual existence is debated. He may represent a personification of a tradition or a composite of multiple writers, but the body of work attributed to him exerted a profound influence.
And then we have figures like Geber, who's often presented as a towering figure in early chemistry, sometimes called the father of chemistry.
Geber, supposedly a celebrated Arabian alchemist of the 9th century, Geber ibn Hayyan, was indeed highly influential in the Western imagination. A substantial body of alchemical writings was attributed to him, and for a long time, Latin texts like the Summa Perfectionis Metallorum were accepted as genuine.
Okay.
These texts positioned him as a key figure in the development of chemistry due to their detailed descriptions of chemical substances and processes, including acids like nitric and sulfuric acid. However.
However.
Yeah. Modern scholarship has revealed that these famous Latin works were likely forgeries, dating from the 13th or 14th centuries, or even later.
Forgeries? Really?
Yeah, seems so. Geber's actual verifiable Arabic writings are more obscure, and his precise role in the development of the sulfur-mercury theory, for example, is now a matter of scholarly debate. What these later falsely attributed writings do demonstrate is that the individual who penned them, often referred to as pseudo-Geber, was a highly knowledgeable chemist for their own time, playing a significant, albeit misleadingly attributed, role in the history of alchemical thought.
So a skilled chemist hiding behind a famous name. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the medieval period in Europe? Who were some of the most prominent alchemists during that time?
Roger Bacon, the 13th century English Franciscan friar, stands out as one of the most remarkable medieval thinkers with alchemical interests.
Roger Bacon, yeah, heard of him. Didn't he predict airplanes or something?
He had some remarkably forward-thinking ideas, yes. Considering the limited scientific knowledge of his era, his intellectual breadth was extraordinary. He's even been credited as an early proponent of the scientific method. Bacon firmly believed in the existence and potential of the Philosopher's Stone, not only for transmuting metals, but also for extending human life.
Transmutation and longevity, the big two.
Right. He supported the sulfur-mercury theory of metallic composition, and while he was interested in astrology, he was critical of purely magical or superstitious notions, emphasizing the importance of continual concoction, persistent experimental work in the pursuit of the stone.
So he was more science-minded for his time.
Relatively speaking, yes. Then there's Raymond Lully. His name frequently appears in discussions of medieval alchemy.
Raymond Lully, or Lull.
Ramon Lull, yes. A somewhat eccentric 13th century Spanish mystic and theologian from Majorca. He had a considerable number of alchemical works attributed to him, though the authenticity of many of these remains highly questionable.
Another case of questionable attribution.
It seems likely, yeah. Some scholars suggest they were written by a different individual altogether, who adopted his famous name. Lull himself led a fascinating and adventurous life, including a dramatic conversion experience and extensive missionary journeys. In the alchemical texts attributed to him, he supposedly claimed that the key to the Philosopher's Stone lay in extracting mercury from silver or gold.
Extracting mercury from gold. Interesting twist. Then there's the almost mythical figure of Nicolas Flamel, the Parisian scrivener who supposedly struck it rich through alchemy.
Ah, Flamel, yes. Nicolas Flamel, who lived in 14th and 15th century Paris, did indeed become a wealthy man, and this later fueled the popular legend that he had achieved his fortune through the secrets of alchemy.
But it's just a legend.
Well, the captivating story of him acquiring a mysterious ancient book filled with cryptic diagrams supposedly the Book of Abraham the Jew, and ultimately unlocking the secrets of metallic transmutation, is more likely a product of later imagination than historical fact.
Oh, shame. Good story, though.
It is a great story. The alchemical works that bear his name are also of dubious origin, though they generally align with the prevailing sulfur-mercury theory of metals. Flamel's enduring fame really highlights the public fascination with the idea of alchemical wealth and secret knowledge.
People wanted to believe it was possible. What about Basil Valentine? That sounds like a pseudonym designed to add a bit of mystique.
You're absolutely right. Basil Valentine, supposedly a 15th or 16th century Benedictine monk, is now widely accepted as a pseudonym for an author, or maybe authors, who were active around the year 1600.
So, definitely not a medieval monk.
No. The most famous work attributed to him is the Triumphal Chariot of Antimony, which provided remarkably accurate descriptions of various antimonial preparations and their medicinal applications. Antimony was a big deal then.
Antimony, okay.
So while Basil Valentine wasn't a historical Benedictine monk, the writings under that name are significant because they demonstrate the growing understanding of specific chemical substances and their uses in medicine during that era. It shows the knowledge was advancing.
Moving into the Renaissance and the early modern period, Paracelsus is a truly towering, albeit controversial figure. His name sounds explosive.
Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. Yes, Bombastus, better known as Paracelsus. He was a 16th century's physician, alchemist, and philosopher of truly revolutionary, if sometimes erratic, genius.
Bombastic, maybe.
He certainly had that reputation. He is considered the founder of iatrochemistry, or medicinal chemistry, shifting the primary focus of alchemical pursuits away from solely the transmutation of metals and toward the preparation of chemical remedies for diseases.
Using chemicals as medicine, basically.
Right. He emphasized the vital connection between the microcosm, the human being, and the macrocosm, the universe. And he introduced his influential theory of the three fundamental principles, the tria prima, that he believed constituted all matter. Sulfur, representing combustibility, mercury, representing fusibility and volatility, and salt, representing fixity and solidity.
Sulfur, mercury, salt, different from the four elements.
Exactly, a different framework. Paracelsus was a highly controversial figure in his own time, clashing constantly with traditional Galenic medicine and holding a complex mix of insightful medical observations and rather fantastical cosmological beliefs, a real character.
And then we have the rather infamous and scandalous duo of Edward Kelly and John Dee. Their story always raises an eyebrow.
Oh, indeed. Edward Kelly was, well, to put it mildly, a highly skilled charlatan and con artist. He'd apparently had his ears cropped for forgery before he even met Dee.
Ouch, a known fraudster then.
Seems so. In the late 16th century, he managed to completely dupe the highly respected mathematician, astronomer, and occult philosopher John Dee. Dee was brilliant, but perhaps a bit too credulous. Kelly convinced Dee that he possessed profound alchemical secrets and the ability to communicate with angels through a scrying stone.
Angels telling him alchemical secrets?
Supposedly. Their collaboration was marked by alleged miraculous transmutations. Kelly producing small amounts of gold, elaborate seances, with Dee recording angelic conversations, and culminated in a bizarre and scandalous incident involving forced wife-sharing, supposedly dictated by one of Kelly's angelic contacts.
Whoa, okay. That took a turn.
It certainly did. Kelly's blatant dishonesty ultimately led to their dramatic falling out, and Kelly was later imprisoned several times by rulers hoping to force him to make gold. He died trying to escape. Their story serves as a vivid illustration of the potential for deception within the world of esoteric pursuits.
Quite a dramatic and cautionary tale. What about Alexander Sethon and Michael Sendivogius? Their story sounds like it has elements of intrigue and betrayal, too.
Alexander Sethon, sometimes called the Cosmopolite, a Scottish alchemist of the late 16th and early 17th centuries, was reputed to possess remarkable alchemical secrets, particularly concerning the transmutation of base metals. He famously demonstrated alleged transmutations across Europe, which attracted considerable attention, both positive and negative.
Negative like imprisonment.
Exactly. His knowledge led to his imprisonment and torture by the Elector of Saxony, Christian II, who was eager to extract his secrets. Michael Sendivogius, a Polish nobleman and alchemist who was also searching for the Philosopher's Stone, apparently helped Sethon escape, or perhaps met him just before he died from the torture.
Okay, a rescue, maybe.
The story goes that Sendivogius married Sethon's widow and acquired his remaining transmuting powder and perhaps some notes. However, he wasn't granted the full extent of Sethon's knowledge. Sendivogius later published Sethon's work, A New Light of Alchemy, under his own name and continued to engage in alleged public transmutations, which eventually led to his own imprisonment, though he managed to escape. Their story highlights the dangers and complexities faced by those who claimed alchemical abilities.
A dangerous game to play. And we can't overlook John Baptist van Helmont, a significant figure in the transition towards modern scientific thinking.
John Baptist van Helmont, a 17th century Flemish physician and chemist, was a firm believer in the reality of the philosopher's stone. He even claimed to have personally witnessed and performed transmutations of mercury into gold, using a tiny amount of the stone given to him by a visitor, although he stated that he never knew its precise composition.
He claimed he did it himself.
Yes, a very small-scale transmutation. But despite holding on to some alchemical beliefs, van Helmont was also a crucial figure in the development of early chemistry. He conducted meticulous experiments, made significant observations about gases. He actually coined the term gas from the Greek chaos and challenged many long-held Aristotelian ideas about the natural world.
So a bridge figure between alchemy and chemistry.
Very much so. Then there were those who focused more on the mystical and spiritual aspects of alchemy, like Thomas Vaughan.
That sounds familiar.
Thomas Vaughan, writing under the pseudonym Eugenius Philalethes in the 17th century, was a prominent figure in what's called transcendental alchemy. For Vaughan, the true philosopher's stone was not primarily a physical substance for metallic transmutation, but rather a symbol of mystical illumination and spiritual perfection.
More focused on the inner work.
Primarily, yes.
All right.
However, he wasn't purely a spiritual theorist. He also engaged in practical alchemical experiments and tragically is believed to have died from inhaling mercury fumes in his laboratory, illustrating the inherent risks involved in these practices, even if your focus is spiritual.
Wow, died from his experiments. And the enigmatic figure known as Irenaeus Philalethes, another Philalethes.
Yes, Irenaeus Philalethes, meaning peaceful lover of truth, was another influential 17th century alchemical author who wrote under a pseudonym. The true identity of this Philalethes is uncertain, still debated. Some scholars suggest it could have been Thomas Vaughan himself writing under a different name, or perhaps the English chemist George Starkey who emigrated to America.
A mystery man.
Indeed. Regardless of their true identity, the works attributed to Irenaeus Philalethes, particularly those included in the famous collection, the Hermetic Museum, were highly influential and presented unique perspectives on the fundamental elements and the concept of a metallic seed from which metals supposedly grew.
Finally, jumping much closer to our time, we have the more recent and still incredibly mysterious figure of Fulcanelli.
Ah, Fulcanelli. Perhaps the most enigmatic alchemist of the 20th century. Very little is known about his actual identity, or even if he was a single person.
Really? Still unknown?
Still debated. He authored two highly influential books, Le Mystère des Cathédrales, The Mystery of the Cathedrals, and Les Demeures Philosophales, Dwellings of the Philosophers, in which he presented a fascinating and intricate interpretation of Gothic architecture and other structures as being filled with hidden alchemical symbolism.
Like we mentioned with the cathedrals earlier.
Exactly. He really popularized that idea. His writings have captivated and inspired generations of esoteric scholars and practitioners. Adding to the mystery, his disciple, Eugene Consillier, claimed to have witnessed Fulcanelli perform a successful alchemical transmutation of, I think it was, lead into gold in a laboratory near Sarcelles, France in 1922.
Consillier claimed he saw it, a 20th century transmutation.
That's the claim. It continues to fuel debate and speculation.
What a diverse and intriguing cast of characters, each contributing in their own way to the long and winding history of alchemy. So after all their dedicated efforts spanning centuries and continents, what was the ultimate outcome of alchemy? Did they ever truly achieve their magnum opus? Did they manage to create gold, discover the elixir of life?
That is indeed the central question, isn't it? The one that has captivated people for centuries. When it comes to the literal transmutation of base metals into gold, well, modern nuclear physics has shown that it is theoretically possible to change one element into another through nuclear reactions.
Right, in particle accelerators and reactors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But these processes are vastly different from anything that alchemists could have conceived of or achieved with their equipment and understanding of matter. We do, however, have intriguing historical accounts from respected individuals like van Helmont, whom we mentioned, and also Johann Friedrich Helvetius, a 17th century Dutch physician.
Helvetius, what did he say?
He wrote a famous account of a mysterious visitor who gave him a tiny piece of the Philosopher's Stone, claiming it could transmute lead into gold. Helvetius was initially skeptical but tried it, following the stranger's instructions, and reported successfully transmuting a piece of lead into high-quality gold, which he said passed subsequent tests by goldsmiths.
Wow. Another first-hand account.
Yes, and these detailed testimonies from apparently credible witnesses are difficult to dismiss entirely out of hand. Yet they must be viewed with a degree of critical skepticism, given the limitations of scientific knowledge at the time and the potential for misinterpretation, self-deception, or even, elaborate hoaxes by the supposed possessors of the stone. Perhaps maintaining an open but ultimately agnostic stance is the most reasonable approach regarding literal transmutation by alchemical means.
So maybe not the kind of gold they envisioned through the methods they imagined, but our material emphasizes a different, much more tangible and lasting outcome of alchemical pursuits.
Absolutely. Even if they didn't unlock the mythical secrets of the Philosopher's Stone in the way they hoped, alchemists made countless invaluable scientific observations and developed a vast array of new and significant chemical substances and techniques. Distillation, sublimation, crystallization. Many lab techniques we still use originated or were refined in alchemical labs.
Okay, practical chemistry skills.
Yes, and their empirical approach, their persistent experimentation, even if guided by a different theoretical framework, laid a crucial groundwork for the eventual development of modern chemistry. The iatrochemists, like Paracelsus and Van Helmont, who deliberately shifted the focus of their work towards preparing medicinal remedies using chemical principles, were particularly pivotal in this transition. Modern chemistry, as a distinct scientific discipline separate from both medicine and philosophy, truly emerged from these alchemical roots.
So, in a very real sense, they were the forerunners of modern chemists, even if their ultimate goals were framed within a different worldview. They paved the way.
Precisely. They were driven by a worldview that intertwined the material and the spiritual in ways we often don't in modern science. But their methods of careful observation and systematic experimentation, however mixed up with mystical beliefs they might have been, were essential precursors to the development of the scientific method as we understand it today.
But there was also a less positive side to the legacy of alchemy, wasn't there? The rise of charlatans and outright fraud. We touched on Kelly.
Sadly, yes. The very allure of alchemical promises, the promise of unimaginable wealth, perfect health, and even eternal life, coupled with the often deliberately obscure and symbolic language of alchemical texts, created a fertile ground for deception.
Easy to fake it if no one understands it anyway.
Kind of, yeah. As the genuine pursuit of alchemical knowledge proved to be incredibly challenging and often yielded no immediate or tangible material rewards, many individuals who called themselves alchemists were simply looking to exploit the hopes and credulity of others for personal gain. Figures like Edward Kelly, whom we discussed, and the notorious Count Cagliostro in the 18th century, another fascinating character, by the way, perfectly exemplified this darker side of alchemy, preying on the desires and vulnerabilities of the public.
It serves as a cautionary reminder, I suppose, that even the most fascinating and intellectually stimulating pursuits can be susceptible to exploitation and misrepresentation. Well, this has been a truly enriching deep dive into the multifaceted world of alchemy, revealing a reality far more complex and intriguing than the simplistic stereotypes. It has indeed. And as we mentioned earlier, we cannot conclude this exploration without acknowledging the enduring enigma of Fulcanelli, the stories and theories surrounding his identity, and that alleged witnessed transmutation by his disciple Cancelliet in 1922. Well, they're so compelling and raise so many fascinating questions that they truly warrant their own dedicated deep dive in a future discussion.
Absolutely, something fascinating to look forward to. I'd love to hear more about Cancelliet's account. And on that note, it really makes you ponder, doesn't it? Considering how fluid the boundaries between what we now consider science and what we might call belief or even magic could be in the past. And the persistent human drive to understand the fundamental nature of reality, both the tangible world around us and the more elusive spiritual realm within. It's a quest that continues to drive human inquiry in various forms even today, wouldn't you say?
I absolutely would. It's an enduring quest. Thank you for joining us on this exploration.
Thanks for listening.
Until next episode.